Welcome to Psyche Magic, a podcast about waking up to the subconscious via our nocturnal dreams. I'm your host, Jordan Hale. I'm a psychotherapist based in Nashville, Tennessee. Together, we'll learn to befriend the unknown and her deep well of wisdom. While aspects of this podcast may feel therapeutic, it is never meant to take the place of therapy. Welcome back to season 3 of Psyche Magic. I'm so glad you're here with us, and I hope you've had a beautiful summer season. In stepping away from the show for our hiatus, I have experienced some really intense life events that I will touch on briefly, especially as they relate to the future of the podcast and some changes that we are planning for this season and beyond. So we will do a few announcements and then we will get into our fabulous interview. In the course of our 4-month break from the show, I experienced both the excitement and renewing hopefulness of a pregnancy, as well as the shock and devastation of a pregnancy loss. The emotional and physical whiplash of this roller coaster has certainly taken a toll, and it's also transforming me in the way that only grief can. This is still so fresh and I'm still doing a lot of processing, but I'll be sharing more as the season unfolds, along with my partners and my journey towards the calling that we still feel towards becoming parents. Given our tenet of commitment to authenticity and openness with subjects related to mental health on this show, I cannot in good faith perpetuate the silent suffering born out of the stigma and lack of information and awareness around miscarriage. So I will be sharing more, and I thank you in advance for grace and good vibes as I navigate one of the more tumultuous times in my life. But right now, what I need is slowness to be able to linger in my internal world, to take things off of my plate. But the work of this podcast is so life-giving and inspiring to me that I am determined to keep it going. So we are going to be making some adjustments this season, and I'm optimistic that this will end up being a key evolution towards long-term sustainability rather than sacrifice. Full-length interview episodes of Psyche Magic will now air on the first Wednesday of every month, year-round. Instead of hustling through a season of bi-weekly episodes and then taking a long break, we are going to see how it feels to slow our output, but stretch it across the full calendar year. Another tenet of the show is fostering experimental methods of tapping into the subconscious in order to enhance creativity and provide inspiration for artistry. In the spirit of this, we will also be adding a new weekly offering, which I'm really excited about. The Saturday Salon, a weekly virtual hour of communal creativity facilitated by me, in which members can gather and support each other in working on their creative projects. So each and every Saturday at 11 a.m. Central Time via Zoom, beginning on September 9th, I will lead a ritual to create sacred energetic space, then lead a discussion in which we can share some recent creative inspiration, and then open up for free time for each of us to work on something creative. Whether it's making art, music, writing, working in your dream journal, or even baking a loaf of bread. Any activity performed mindfully and with intention can be creative. At the end of the hour, we will have space to share our work with each other if desired. I cannot wait to build this group and watch our self-discovery and creativity blossom together. This will be a donation-based offering available to all via the events tab on my website, psychemagicpodcast.com. The Saturday Salon will be free to Patreon backers. Whether you're looking for detailed show notes, opportunities to send in dreams for interpretation, our long-standing bonus minisodes with exercises and meditations to enhance your dream work, or an all-access pass to the Saturday Salon, we have something for everyone. All benefits are outlined at patreon.com/Psyche Magic. Now, without further ado, our guest today is a witchy therapist superstar here in Nashville, Sarah Jane Chapman. Sarah Jane is a yoga therapist, tarot reader, and creator who co-created and designed her own tarot deck, Be With Your Body Tarot. So many mutual friends and colleagues have told us that we need to meet, and sure enough, the stars aligned and a pair of kindred spirits were born. We discussed the forever evolving work of body neutrality and unconditional acceptance, intergenerational trauma, and the intersection of astrology and tarot. And that is just the beginning. I hope you enjoyed 2 Scorpio moons opening up and getting deep. If you know, you know. Now on to my interview with Sarah Jane Chapman. Right, Sarah Jane Chapman. Welcome to Psyche Magic. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to be here. So we met at this event where I was selling my cards and doing readings, and we'd heard about each other
from
like
multiple
in the
people.
World. You're like, oh my God, Gina Jordan, yeah. Me too, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy to meet you. And then we instantly were like, okay,
no wonder several people were like, you two should know each other. You have a lot in common.
Yeah.
I know. It's going to be really fun. We'll have much to discuss and nerd out about. Yeah, let's dive in, Sarah Jane. Let's do this. We're going to do our tarot pull. So as Sarah Jane just mentioned, she has a tarot deck that she created called Be With Your Body Tarot. So we're going to do it a little differently on the show today than usual. We're going to pull one card from Rider-Waite-Smith, as we usually do. And then we're going to pull a card from Sarah Jane's deck. So double tarot today. You're all in for a treat.
I love it. I'm so excited.
So I pre-shuffled our deck. Sometimes if I'm meeting a guest for the first time, I'll wait and I'll shuffle when we're like together. But since I already know you and I can already feel your essence, I was like, I'm just going to pre-shuffle this. And so this is the card that I got. And I'm so excited about this. I feel like this is it just makes sense. Okay. Queen of Wands. Hello.
Okay.
Tell me.
Jordan. Okay. This is so funny. Okay, so can I talk about this card?
Please. Now, quickly before you do, I'm going to just describe it for listeners who don't know it, like off the top of their heads. This is obviously one of the court cards, Queen card. So she is sitting on her throne of lions. She has this yellow cloak. She's in this very like power stance, just kind of wide stance. She's holding a staff, the wand. She's also holding a sunflower. She has a crown. And then there's also this little black cat at her feet. He's got a mischievous look on his face. So yes, Sarah Jane, let's talk Queen of Wands. Tell me everything.
Okay, this is so funny because in my deck, they're all based in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but there's a little spin on all of them because it's called Be With Your Body. So I consider this a therapeutic tarot deck. So it's all centered around people connecting not just to their bodies, but to every aspect of themselves. And so each suit is connected to that. We keep the elements the same, but we name it with a different body part. And then there's also this layer of chakras and like, I
love this,
where it shows up in the body and like how that represents it. So the pentacles in the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith are feet. And the cups are hips. So there's a water element to cup. So it's like a hips is like the sacral chakra, root. The pentacles is like the feet is like the root chakra. And then wands are hands. So it's a fire element. And there's also, I feel like the fire element, the wands, and then in hands and in my deck is like, There's a lot of like action.
Yes.
With this suit.
Yes. Making, creating, manifesting.
Yes. And then the swords are eyes, or like an air quality. So it's like the like perception, but also like our throat chakra, how we communicate, right? So it travels up the body. So the Queen of Hands is what I would call it in my deck, is actually one of my signifier cards.
Of course.
And so it's really funny because I'm creating this, and it will be out by the time I think that you release this episode. I'm creating a Be With Your Body Tarot 101 online course.
Fabulous.
And so I was just recording this section where I went through the hands suit. As you're going through, I have there's a way you can figure out what your birth card is in the major arcana.
Cool. I love that.
And then we can even talk about that if you don't already know, but we can even talk about that. And then I want people to find their signifier cards within the suits. So as you're going through the suits, I have them in my workbook. There's a little section where you can write down like what card, what it means to you, not even just for yourself, but like how you signify like other people in your life.
Wow.
And, and I would love to hear your experience with this. Because I've been playing with tarot for a very long time. And I feel like in different phases of my life, I have had different signifier cards that feel really true.
Sure.
And so my interpretation of the Queen of Hands or the Queen of Wands is like someone who, like, I kind of give this illustration of a summer's evening, like people who are like getting together and networking and like communicating and like trying to like make something, like it's like a collaborative
I love
person.
that.
And so that has actually been, that's been one of my main signifier cards recently, which is so funny.
In this season for you.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, just
Sarah
like
Jane.
thank you. Like helping women, witchy element too, which is Black Cat.
She's one of the witchiest cards in the deck for me.
She's the witchiest card. Yeah. I talk about this, like the queens all have like different elements like that are connected to the Empress.
Yeah.
Her and the swords, I feel like the furthest away from like the Empress. Like the most Empressy is like Pentacles and then Cups.
Earthy.
And then yes, exactly. And so it goes from like the rooted like mother figure to like ethereal, big picture, witchy woman.
Magical, like a creator.
Yeah.
For me, oh no, show me. I want to see the illustration. Oh, look at this. So for the listeners, it's such a gorgeous deck because it's really got this very grounded sense to the way that all of the imagery comes across. Like it's very earthy colors and it just feels very rooted. So tell us about it, please.
Thank you. Yeah. So the illustrator, her name is Sarah Stressy, and she's a dear friend of mine. And when we got together to create this deck, I was like, because this was like an idea that I'd had for years where I was like, I want to do this deck. And we had mentioned, we connected over the fact that we're both projectors. And if people don't know, like projectors needs to be invited into things.
Exactly.
And Sarah she was a client of mine, and we were doing body work. And I pulled a tarot card for her one day. She was like, I've wanted to design a deck. And I was like, I have this deck idea, but I'm not a designer. And so we partnered up, and she's a reflector. So it's like if you're unfamiliar, we're talking about human design, and reflectors like can take these ideas and like flex them back to you. Right. And she was such a great partner because we got together. I literally brought like 10 different tarot decks because she didn't really know much about tarot.
Nice.
And I was like, here's the like flow, like, and here's this kind of image. Obviously I had the Rider Waite Smith, but I also brought the Modern Witch, which very much calls. Yeah, I love that deck. And then I brought like an herbalism deck, and I brought like all these things. And I wanted them all to have this quality, a block print or like a stamp. Yeah. And so they even have this like kind of texture to them.
Absolutely.
And in this card, the queens and the kings and the courts all have like high hair.
Yeah.
So it's like crown. So she has like really high, like flowing curly hair. And she's got a little fox in her lap. So there's an animal for each suit. Okay, cool. Yeah, so it's like a little fox. And here she's chilling, right? So it's like have this, hey, I'm trying to like connect with people and like converse. And she's, So this is one of mine. So it's really funny that you pulled out. I was like, oh my God, that's my like signifier card.
But she's comfortable in her own skin. And we're going to get into that more too. This is a very embodied card for me. Yep. Like this is someone who knows who they are, and that there's a sense of just like relaxing into that, I would say. And I just love the little black cat. I feel like it's just, I'm obsessed with like Jungian archetypes, right? This is a dreams podcast. I can't help myself. So when I see the black cat, I'm like, oh, this is the shadow. Like she is not only comfortable in her own skin, she's comfortable with her shadow aspects. Like she's open to all of her parts and her aspects. And how powerful is that? Truly. It's the ultimate.
Well, you probably know this, but Carl Jung, he would use tarot in his therapy.
I have deep dived this and astrology, Sarah Jane.
Oh, that makes sense.
In fact,
astrology and tarot are very intertwined.
I was going to say, I think at the time he was even more into astrology. And then that, as it does, that bleeds into tarot and archetypes and all our favorite things.
I love it.
Fun. Do you want to pull another card from your deck, or do you feel like that was fun to just deep dive that one?
I'm good with a card.
Yeah,
I feel like
I'm good with whatever you want to do.
I don't know. I'm going to clear the energy. I think I'm feeling a 2 shuffle.
I love that. That's so cool.
This is really funny. I pulled the King of Hands.
Oh, okay. On theme. Love it.
Yeah, we're just moving up. But yeah, the King of Hands is someone who I interpret this as can see the big picture of what needs to happen and is able to like delegate, can be like, it's like a really like a beautiful, like benevolent leader.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Like the really loving and balanced aspects of the male archetype.
Yes.
Very evolved.
So the Queen of Hands, the fox is sitting in her lap.
So cute.
And then the King of Hands, the fox is like sitting next to them.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And then, we have the animals in all the court cards. So each of the knights are like riding whatever the animal is, right? Instead of a horse. And then usually the pages, like the animal's like small, but like kind of near them.
Yeah.
But it's not like it hasn't like approached them yet,
Yeah. They're in different stages of relationship with these beings. I know I love that there's a human and an animal and a natural world element in most of these depictions. It's really great.
And it's funny, the hand suit specifically, they're until the king and queen, until really because even in the page and knight, we have really specific herbs. So it's like we use all herbs. Every card has like its own extra layer of meaning.
Wow. Okay, that is witchy AF. I love that. Oh my God.
I wanted to really incorporate it. And then the pentacle or the feet or the pentacles, they're all like mushrooms, so like different types of mushrooms.
Nice. Makes sense.
And then the hips or the cups are all like nondescript, like water plants because they're all underwater. And then could you guess the plant for the eyes?
Dang, let me think about this. What would be a plant for the eyes? I would think anything associated with like air element, right? So I'm trying to think but now I'm like, I don't know, what would that even be? I don't know.
So there are air plants.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
And cacti. To allude to the sword, sharp energy.
Oh my God, totally.
Yeah.
So fun.
So all like kind of desert plants really is what we were,
your deck has been on my wish list for a while and it's now like creeping up to the top of the list. I'm like, I need this in my life. Be with your body tarot. Everyone, just go get it. It's so beautiful. Yeah. Just very unique. Okay. So we'll keep the Queen of Wands here. I'm just going to kind of like look at her while we talk in case she like whispers little things to me.
She'll tell us things.
She'll give us some more little tidbits. Okay, so let's transition. We're going to talk a little bit about your dream world. Okay, Sarah Jane, first of all, I was laughing so hard because when you filled out my little dream survey, you were saying that your Scorpio moon is feeling a little protective of your dreams. I, too, am a Scorpio moon. I was like, God. I feel that so hard. You don't even know.
That's hilarious.
Do I dream like crazy? Yes. Do I want to share all my dreams? No. Yeah. Tell me, or tell this for the listeners too, like, what is your kind of sense of Scorpio moon, of that like placement, and just how would you describe that?
Yeah. So Scorpio in general is a very private sign. So I was thinking about this. I love thinking about the quality of the signs as to explore them. So Scorpio is fixed water.
Yeah.
And often there will be like the quality, the cardinal, the mutable, the fixed. sometimes it really goes with the element and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
So fixed water is frozen ice, if you think about
Right.
it. So there is like a depth to it, but it's like, I'm going to hold it in.
Like,
I'm holding it
it's
tight.
going to be
You don't
hard
get
for you to dip
crack it.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And it will be like, it'll be sensational and maybe even painful to really get into that.
Ooh.
Yeah. So but it's funny because so I'm a Libra sun and Libra rising, which is
Nice.
actually a very open sign and like
I
very
know.
personal. So people don't always see that Scorpio moon part of me, and my moon is actually in my first house with my
Mine
sun.
too.
Oh,
because I'm a Scorpio rising.
Ah, nice. What's your sun and what's your sun?
Sun's in Pisces, so I'm all water, baby, all water.
Yes, this makes sense. I could see this.
I know, right? I can't help
I know.
myself. It's just
But
what I
it
am.
is what it is. But it's just funny because with my Scorpio moon, I think it can feel a little contradictory because I am so like outwardly open, but the things that I'm private about, I am private about.
Yeah,
And,
exactly. No, that makes sense.
Like it was funny after my daughter was born, I had some friends that were like, you should hire a house cleaner. And I was like, I do not want someone. I do not. I don't know why. I
have said the exact same word, Sarah Jane.
Not want someone clean my house.
I'm like, I don't want you penetrating my private energetic zone. That's not okay with me.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. As a Scorpio moon, I understand. So I was laughing so hard because I'm like asking you all about your dreams. And you're like, I'll give you a little tidbit, but I'm not going to give you all of it. And I'm like, my Scorpio moon respects that. Yes. So I love it. So we'll talk a little bit about, let's see, you presented a dream. This was a recent dream. And if you want to tell us about it, you can, but it was like a nostalgic moment. So share to the extent that you're comfortable.
Sure. This dream I feel fine with sharing.
Yeah.
It was, I grew up in upstate New York and my family lived in this house from when I was born till I was about 5.
Yeah.
And I had this friend who lived across the street and she was literally like 2 weeks older than I. So we were like the same. We were best friends. We would literally like, I have some of my earliest memories this is actually kind of a funny memory. I was holding a fruit roll up. And
of course,
it was winter, of course. It was winter time. Someone was carrying me like across the street to go over and play at her house and the fruit roll up froze. Oh. And that was like, but it was like a science thing where I was like, oh, this is interesting. Yeah. Like, oh, I never just remember, I have all these like really old memories and and we maintained our friendship through like the beginning of high school. So even after my family moved just a couple miles away to a different school district, we would still meet up regularly. And my dream was that I went back to that street. But what's interesting is I didn't go to my old house. I went to her house.
Okay.
And she wasn't even there. I haven't talked to this person in probably 15 years. I'm 35. We haven't talked in a long time. And so I went back to that house and I saw her parents and her older sibling.
Yeah.
And everyone has aged, including me. Like I have aged. Not older than I am. Like I just am my age and they are how I would guess their ages are.
Yeah.
And I just remember their house and then just talking to them on the porch and asking them about their lives. And it was just like sweet. It was like nothing like happened.
Exactly.
It was just this, like sweet. And I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that family in a long time. And and I think a part of it is, so I live in Nashville and I moved away from like my parents now. My family mostly lives in Massachusetts. And we went back and visited, and I've lived here for 10 years now.
Okay.
And I went back and we went up to Rhode Island and did like a family beach trip. Nice. And I was just like, oh, like the family part of things. But I live far away. So I'm having this like internal conflict happening where I love my life where I am right now. I have my own family. I have a daughter, I'm married. I love my house. I love my community. And there is this like nostalgia. Yeah, it was just interesting.
It's funny because when I hear you describe that dream, and especially just given like the emotional quality of it, that it was just like, it wasn't emotionally fraught in any way. It was just sweet, dipping in, nostalgic. It almost reminds me of conversations I've had with people about like a visitation dream, like even after someone has passed or there's been like a transition of some kind. And energetically, we still carry that energetic cord with that person. So we need to dip back in. And dreams are a place where I can do that and just check in. Be like, hey guys, what's up?
Yeah.
It's been a long time. It's good to see you.
How are you? Yes. Yeah. And I think what shocked me is that I didn't feel like I needed to perform for them. I didn't look at all the things that I've done over the last 20 years.
No.
It was just like, how are you? How are you?
Wow.
I don't know. It was just really interesting. because it wasn't something that information that I could actually receive because it's a dream. Like, I don't actually
I
know what's
know.
happening with them.
Exactly.
So that was really interesting. I don't know. It was interesting.
That's really cool. Well, and that was such a formative time in your life. I mean, that 0 to 5, I mean, that's like all of our attachment stuff. That's when it's all getting solidified. And now that reminds me, actually, I don't know if you saw the Barbie movie. I'm like,
oh yeah,
very into the Barbie movie.
I saw it with my mom, actually.
Oh my God, so many feels. But I was reading an interview with Greta Gerwig, who's freaking brilliant. And she was saying that she was thinking a lot when she was making this movie about like her early relationships in her life and how she wants to maintain contact and, again, just like that energetic connection with those people, because that is like the truest aspect of who she is, like deep down. And I was like, shit. Like my inner child. And I was like, oh my God. Like those people know a version of me that is like so real. And I was like, that is deep. Dang. So that just hit me.
That's so funny. That's so interesting. It's so interesting looking back at this family too.
Yeah.
Because so there'd be all these pictures, and my friend's name is Maggie. She's still, I don't know her much more, but there'd be all these, there was this joke that all these pictures of us together, we'd be like hugging, and my mouth is always open because I'm always like, like talking or whatever. So it's funny. Our birthdays are 2 weeks apart, but she's a Virgo and I'm a Libra. And there is a difference in that transition. She was so smart. And she actually, it's funny because of birthday. So the way that birthdays worked out, like in upstate New York, like you could either go ahead or because the school year started today. So it's like you could be older or younger. And she was like so smart that she like went ahead, and I was like my default like internal check up. My Chiron's in the 9th house, to just give you a little bit of heads up. So I was like, from that default, I felt like I was stupid because I was like, I wasn't smart enough to like go ahead,
so
I stayed back.
Carry.
And it's just really interesting because almost all my friends were in the year older than I was.
Got it.
But I was like in this class that I just didn't really connect with. And she was like, but even a different school, but she was like a year older. So it's just really interesting. Yeah. Those like deep parts of ourselves. I think about that. And and I've been thinking about that a lot too, because my daughter is, so her here in the South, the school starts in August.
Yeah.
And so my daughter's birthday is at the end of July. And so she's going to start kindergarten next year, but she's going to be like the youngest. She's going to turn 5 and then like start school like 2 weeks later. And so I've literally been like very much advocating for that because, well, first of all, I think she'll be ready, but I'm like, I just know that, like, I mean, it's probably my own wounding, right? Like that I didn't have this great experience.
But then that informs, it informs this choice and this sensitivity to like wanting to set her up in a certain way. Of course, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I am, because you also mentioned that you like dreamed vividly as a child, like you were probably very sensitive.
Yeah, I saw
very
ghosts.
tuned
You probably saw
in.
ghosts too. Scorpio moon.
Tell me about your ghosts that you would see, please.
So after we moved from that house, we moved to another house that was built in the late 1800s.
Yeah.
And I would see and hear things all the time. And I was a very scared child, very sensitive, very scared child.
I relate to that.
So there was, there were times when it would feel really scary to me. And then there were also times that it was like fine. And so sometimes it would be like a visual, but usually it was a little bit more auditory.
Okay.
And so there was like definitely like a man with a cowboy hat that like sat on the edge of my bed. I don't know. There were definitely, there would be like, like the house was old and creaky, and there would just be like just like energetically in different parts was like, didn't really feel great.
Okay, and then, I relate to that too.
Yeah. And then at my great aunt's house, I remember I would be sleeping and I would hear, and no one was awake. Like I would like look around, like no one is there, and I would hear like talking, that in a voice of someone that I didn't recognize. So I would hear more like auditory ones.
Okay.
But yeah, I would see ghosts. I definitely had these experiences, and but then the narrative was that I was just too sensitive.
So, I see. I was going to ask, how did we make sense of this? But it was that age-old story that you're just a little too sensitive.
Yes, you're too sensitive. Okay. I don't know. It's so funny because there would be these like parts of me that would show up. Because we lived in an old farmhouse. It was weird. It was on a busy road, but we had like an acre of land and like the woods and stuff. So my brother and I would like go into the woods all the time and like build forts. And I remember I would get these, and I don't know if you, whatever, subscribe to this, but I do believe that our souls are recycled, and we've
Oh,
gotten
yeah.
past lives and
I
whatever.
am absolutely on board with this.
Yes.
We could have a whole other conversation about this, Sarah Jane, and we probably should.
Probably should. So I remember having these memories as a small child, probably like pretty quickly after we moved there. So 6, 7 years old, and
Yeah.
looking around and being like, this part of the country looks ugly or something. Or like this place, sometimes I was like, this planet looks ugly, which makes me feel like an
Ooh.
alien. Like I would just have these thoughts. I'm like, where did that come from? And then I'm like, oh, never mind. And I don't know. I always felt like there was this like this older, it was kind of, I was fighting like what was happening in front of me.
Yeah.
And then I always felt like there was this like inner wisdom
Okay, there we go.
that would often be like, no, honey, like you're good. Like just believe in yourself. Like just
Yep.
believe that this is like a thing, even when the people around you don't believe you.
Yep.
And that's one of the reasons why I trust my body. That's what the be with your body is, not just about like how your body looks, but like trusting the wisdom of one's body.
Yeah, the way that your body will show you what you know and what you need and what you remember. If you're able to
I always say
listen.
bodies whisper until they have to scream.
Yeah.
And sometimes they scream at
Okay, yes. That is so true. Maybe little nudges, and then they're like, okay, you're not getting it. So we're going to.
Yeah. So now we're going to yell at you.
We're going to amp this up.
It's funny too, talking about the Barbie movie, there was a lot of, I think, themes around inherited experiences.
Oh, yeah.
And I think about this a lot. So people who have ovaries are born, your DNA. So every person who has ovaries is born with all the eggs they will ever have.
Yeah.
So one's DNA was in their grandmother.
Yep.
If they're a person, it's
mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing. And so I think about that. So the things that someone's grandmother was experiencing when they were pregnant with their mother, then that, and so sometimes I wonder, is it my past life or am I picking up on this? Like, is my body telling me about that? Who knows, right?
Yes. Frequently asking myself as a sensitive person, is this mine?
Yeah. And maybe it's not.
Or is this
someone else's? And I think about this too. I also, again, having a small child, have you seen Encanto?
No, it's on my list.
My God,
I have not
Jordan.
seen it.
10 out of 10 recommends. I
need
mean,
to see it.
It is such a beautiful. So, I mean, in general, it is a lot about inherited trauma.
Okay.
So basically this like magical world is created because their grandfather was like violently killed, basically. And then they were gifted all of these like magical powers, and then their children inherited them. But because of that, they were holding on to, specifically the grandmother whose husband had passed, are holding on to these powers with like clenched fists.
Okay.
Being like, we need to control this. This needs to be exact. This needs to be perfect.
Okay.
And then that starts to break as the generations go down. And it's like, oh, was this really, whose is this? Why do we feel like we need to like be, and it's really beautiful. I don't want to get too much into it because there's like little twists and turns, but
I love that concept.
And it's beautiful in the end because things do fall apart.
Yeah.
And so they live in this village and just the family has the magical powers. In the end, they like kind of let down their guard and they ask for help. And the village comes and they help. That's the part that really makes me cry. Is it's like when we think that we need to do it, like, yes, it may not be ours, but like, how could we like ask for help or like support in a way that we can? So
yes, like I don't want to carry this all by myself.
No, it's too much. And healing, I've heard this in a couple ways, like by healing oneself and one's relationships and whatever, it actually goes in both directions generationally, right? So it will affect future, but also past.
I love that.
Right? Because it breaks that curse in a way.
Dude. It's so encouraging and beautiful and sweet to think that like the work that I'm doing is somehow energetically affecting past, present, and future. That's just very, very powerful thought that I'm like sitting with.
I mean, sometimes too much. And this is that beautiful line that they had in Barbie, that mother stands still so the daughters can look back and see how far they've come.
That part.
And I think about that so much as someone who has been doing a lot of work. I'm in eating disorder recovery that I inherited from multiple generations.
Yes.
And I've done a lot of work. And so it's like, sometimes I think like, oh, I have to do all this work. But then I look at my kid and it's like, well, I'm going to mess her up somehow because that's just what we do. You can't not.
We're human.
She might in 30 years be like, I wish my mom held me back. And I wish in the class after, like there's always something that we're going to do.
There's always something.
Right. There's always something we're going to do. But so I think about that too. It's like, how can I get her set up with the best foundation that I can give her so that she can even go further and she can even go beyond. She's going to be having these ideas and insights that I can't even like fathom.
Freedom.
Yes. That I couldn't even like imagine what that would be like.
I know.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I'm a little verklempt, honestly. I'm very struck by like the depth of what we're discussing. It's just really hitting me right now. So I'm owning that.
Well, having dreams as a jumping off point is such a beautiful place, right? Because it was like,
tends to take us into what really matters.
Yeah, truly. I love that. Yeah, I had this dream and I did have like pleasant, sweet little feelings about it, but I didn't, and I woke up and I was like, oh, that was interesting. I hadn't thought about that family in a long time. And then when you like said, pulled it up, I was like, what do I want to talk about? And I was like, oh, this was like an interest. Like it had usually I remember my dream like for like a couple hours and then it's gone. But it had affected me, it's been within the week, it's been a couple days. It's affected me enough that I was able to pull it back up.
Exactly.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't put too much thought into it. But then, as soon as you started asking questions, I was like,
oh, there's more. You were saying that about your deck. Like there's like layers of meaning, right? In these metaphors, these symbols, these images. And that's exactly what dreams are. They're just giving us these different symbols that bring layers of meaning if we're able to spend time with them and unpack them, which frankly is a privilege. Like,
of course.
It's a privilege to be able to spend time on these things.
Talking about our dreams.
Because I'm not just trying to survive. Like I'm able to get my basic needs met so I can look at these other things. So yeah. Okay. Now I don't want to end our time without getting to talk more about your work, Sarah Jane, because I am so fascinated by this sort of kaleidoscope of things that you do that I think is just so brilliant. So we've touched on tarot, right? Obviously. We've touched on astrology, yoga therapy. Tell us about this, Sarah Jane. Tell us about what is it? What does a yoga therapy session look like?
Such a great question. And I think it can be a little bit confusing because I'm not a therapist, but I'm not like a yoga teacher, right? So it's like this weird zone in between.
Yeah.
So what a yoga therapist is, the specific lineage that I'm trained in is called Vini Yoga, and it's very old. And my teachers make it a very important point to reference Vedic texts that are really old. So we do really specific, someone comes to us and they have X, Y, and Z symptom or experience, then we have ABC thing that we use to help pacify that. Yeah. So it's like we have...
It's like a wisdom tradition that we're working within. Yeah.
It's a wisdom tradition. It's very intentional. And so I taught yoga since 2010. So I've taught yoga for 13 years at this point. Yeah. And did starting my training in 2018.
Nice.
And my yoga therapy training. So that was about 1,000 hours. So it took about 3.5 years. Yeah.
Well, that's the LMFT requirement. We should get 1,000 hours. So that's a lot of hours.
I know. That was actually really validating with one of our instructors was like, to get like a doctorate, this is how long it takes.
Yeah. Like this is serious.
We also transitioned because we'd meet quarterly. And then we also have a few online classes because most of the teachers live on the West Coast of this training, and they would meet in person quarterly in Nashville. But then we obviously had to transition online in 2020. And so that was also a whole other layer of thing. Anyway, so what yoga therapy is, so I work with two different populations. In my private practice, I work with a lot of people who are in eating disorder recovery, and I often work in conjunction with mental health therapists. And so a lot of it is, to put it in therapy talk, it's somatic work. We're working within our bodies. And so they're really gentle. I would say it's not a workout, it's a work in. So I give people a practice.
Yeah.
That is really, it's often like really slow. The breath is the most important part. I would say breath is like
you're doing nothing
the
else.
Magic fairy dust.
Yeah.
Exactly. We breathe. Exactly. The magic fairy dust that helps it all. And we really start to process, like looking at the dreams and tarot, these internal experiences and how, like, what is the disruption in the system to create whatever the thing is. And not saying that it's nobody's fault. Like, we never say it's anyone's fault, but she's like, what is what is off within the system that we can then help to pacify, to find balance. So privately, I work with people in ED recovery. And then I also work at a clinic 2 days a week with people with neurological conditions, stroke survivors, people with traumatic brain injuries. And then I have a handful of patients that are just have like nondescript neurological conditions, just a variety. And in this clinic, so there's me, a yoga therapist. I also do sometimes I do a little bit of body work with my patients. And then we have speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, and we all work collaboratively with these folks. And it was like when I first started working there, I was like, I don't know anything about stroke, but this is what the beauty of the yoga therapy is. Okay, so here is like the condition, right? So often with stroke survivors, not with everyone, but with a lot of folks, there is tone. There's like hypertone. So like their muscles curl in, usually on one side of the body.
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing with it right now with my hand curling in, then my arm like kind of curls in towards my heart, basically. And so the muscles like on the inside of the arm will get so tight that the individual doesn't really have the ability to like move and find space. And so
yeah, of course,
from a yoga therapy perspective, we're like, oh, so movement is vata.
Yes.
And vata, like how can we increase the movement for this person? So usually one of the best things for that is massage, and specifically oil, specifically sesame oil. So I do sesame oil, but also the breathing. And the breath, again, has been this magic fairy dust that just works. And so with a lot of my patients, the first couple sessions, they lay down and I guide them through a breathing practice.
Okay.
And I record it and I want them to, exactly. And then we start to incorporate a little bit of movement. And then sometimes I'll work on them a little bit and then they do a little practice and then we build on it. And it's helped with a lot of my patients have really high anxiety and they're in a lot of pain, and like it really helped. And so now the OTs and PTs are also incorporating some of the breath work into their work because they found it to be so
exactly.
effective.
On that note, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. It's not just let's treat this like an illness and slam our body into the position that we want to get it into. It's let's go from the inside out. You had a little phrase about that a minute ago. I forget what it was. A work in, you said.
Oh, yeah. It's a work in. Yeah. It's not a workout. It's a work in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. So, thank you. So, so typical yoga therapy session, just someone would come to me, whatever is happening for them. I will put together a practice for them in the session. The practices are usually like 10 to 20 minutes long. So they're, really like the goal is that someone does this practice really regularly for it to work. So I want it to be really.
So the timing has to be, we can't just sit down for a whole hour a lot of the time. Yeah.
It's too much. So 10 to 15 minutes. And I usually start with what we would call in the yoga, like low hanging fruit. So if someone's sleep is off, then we like do a nighttime practice, kind of just like, how can we get you regulated? And then we add, and I've had private clients that I've been seeing for 4 or 5 years that as the more that we get into it, the deeper we can get into these practices, and just witnessing their lives just become so much more manageable. It's really beautiful.
Oh, yes. So powerful. Because something that you talk about a lot is just that your body is the deepest, most intimate relationship that you'll ever have. And
that's right.
I would argue that a lot of people struggle to even conceptualize their relation to their body as like an actual relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think about that too. Your body is the longest relationship you'll have in your entire life.
Yep.
And they have been with you through everything. And their goal, like our bodies are living beings. We are inside of our bodies, but we are not our bodies. Our bodies are living beings that we were talking about my dog earlier. You said you have dogs. Like animals need to eat regularly. They need to move their bodies. They want social interaction. They need to snuggle. They need to rest. So like they need to do all these things every day.
Yep.
And it's almost like cultivating that same kind of relationships with our bodies. And if we ignore them or abuse them, like they won't trust us, just like how animals wouldn't.
There
or
will
children.
Be a rupture that then requires repair and rebuilding.
Exactly. And such a big part of connecting to our bodies, you had mentioned privilege a little bit earlier, is recognizing our biases towards our own bodies and towards other bodies.
Yep.
If we think that some bodies are better than other bodies, it'll be really hard for us to find peace with our body.
Exactly. This sort of where my brain goes when you say that is this tie-in with self-compassion. And the more I learn to have compassion for myself and what's happening with me, the easier I find it to have compassion for others. It's a two-way street.
That's right. That's so true. Yeah.
Lovely. It's fun for me too to get to hear more about this kind of blending of yoga, but also the therapeutic benefits of just being in a space where I'm focusing on my actual body and what it needs and what it's asking for in any given moment. It's usually the first thing that falls by the wayside for a lot of people.
I know. You're like, I got things to do.
People to see.
Yeah.
Places to go. Body, what's a body? And it's supposed to function perfectly all the time. And if it doesn't, then I'm mad at it.
One thing that I often say is like such a great intro is like finding pronouns for your body.
I love that.
Instead of saying saying she, he, they, whatever. Because they're a person. They're you.
Whatever fits. But using that, I don't know what the word is. Anthropomorphizing?
Yeah, personifying.
Personifying. Okay, I love that. What else do I want to ask you? Let me look at this. Oh, can you tell us about the 7 principles of embodiment, Sarah Jane?
Oh,
we want to hear them.
I would love to. So I have a podcast with my friend Kate Martin.
Yes.
She is a therapist who specializes in eating disorders. And we came up with these 7 principles of embodiment. And I've actually been using this a lot with my clients and patients, and it's been really effective. So the first principle is acknowledging the struggle. It is hard to be embodied. It is hard, just like period.
Thank you.
It's hard.
That should be number 1. This is hard.
That is number 1. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be present in our bodies. They have these constant needs. They're so annoying. They keep us from the things that we want to do sometimes. Yeah, so it's hard to be embodied. And then the second principle is finding compassion for yourself and others. So like you had just said, when you find compassion for yourself, you can then find it for others. And then you find it for others and you find it for yourself. So it's just beautiful because often once we acknowledge the struggle, then we're pissed. My mom put me on a diet and it's like, both.
Okay,
like,
sure.
That's true.
I have to go through those stages of grief.
Yeah. And then eventually it's like you'll realize, usually the people who are perpetrating were also victims to those systems. Doesn't mean that it's okay, obviously. Just a recognizing that it's just
a factor.
Yeah. So it's hard. Let's have compassion. And the third one is curiosity over criticism.
Beautiful.
And this is one that I talk about a lot with my patients, especially the folks who are feeling really like a lot of anger and grief around changes in their body. Which is all very valid.
Which continues unfolding over the lifespan. We're going to confront 100%. This multiple times.
If you're lucky enough, you will age.
If you're lucky enough,
you will age. And it's likely if you age that you will get sick. And you might even have a disability.
Yep.
And like all these other things. And just like bodies change. Period. Yep. Bodies change. And so how can we be, instead of critical about that or try to shift it or change it or control it, let's be curious about it. Oh, I'm noticing that it takes me a little bit longer to walk up this hill. Okay, I'm just noticing that.
I can orient to that. Expect that.
Okay. So I guess I need an extra 5 minutes to get to where I'm going. Whatever. You know what I mean?
That's
like
okay.
It's okay. Like taking the morality out of it, getting curious. So then from that, we practice presence. So after we get the curiosity, presence. Okay, so now I've been curious. I'm exploring. Now I can be present with what is. Good, bad, neutral.
Right, exactly.
And then, And then after presence comes neutrality. And so a lot of folks are like, body neutrality, like that's the goal. Like, how do we get there though? So the next one is neutrality.
Can you quickly just give us your take on, because you hear a lot in kind of pop culture, pop psychology about like body positivity, but you're using a term body neutrality. Can you kind of talk about the distinction there?
Sure. And I want to just name too, because I've been doing this work for a long time. So I've watched this transition happen and this evolution. It's more of an evolution happening because the body positivity really was a backlash to everyone hating their body. They're like, I don't want to hate my body. I want to be positive about my body. And then it was like, when you really looked into it, it became this like like the same coin, the other side of the same coin. It's, I don't like loathe my body. My body is the best thing ever. And it's, we want to be somewhere in between. Because again, bodies change. So how can we find this place of just being with our bodies, being present with our bodies? So there's a lot of like kind of that backlash pivot from body positivity to body neutrality to be present with our bodies.
Yeah.
But I want to have a little caveat with that because I've done a lot of thinking on this.
I'm sure.
This is something that people are like, oh, I don't want to love my body. Okay. So I think that when people think that they need to love their body, that means that they are like, that their body is like, they think that their body is perfect. Now, I want you to think about, I want you to think about relationships with people or animals that you love. When we are in relationships with people or beings that we love, they are not perfect.
No.
We love them
that
even though they do things that annoy us. Exactly. Even though they do things that annoy us. Even though they do things that we wish that they hadn't. We can forgive them. We can be present with them. And I think it's so important to be like, I don't know, it's almost like I kind of want to circle back to not body positivity, but yes, I do love my body. Like I love my dog who is annoying me because he's crying by the door.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
She's worthy of love.
Exactly. And it's like, when you really think about that, or my kid, like, oh my God, I love her more than anything. And we're trying to get out the door and she was like, la, 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 like looking, and I'm just like, come on, it's like, we can love things and be present with them for what they are.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. But
now, I derailed you, but I wanted to just expound on the neutrality principle.
No, it's
right?
really important. So neutrality allows you to have that space of like, when you do feel frustrated or angry or annoyed with your body, then you don't take that extra like shame, or there doesn't need to be shame about it. It's just like, well, this is annoying right now, and that's okay. And just kind of riding the waves of whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So the next principle is pleasure and joy.
Oh,
and this is so important because, so many folks who feel disconnected from their body, we are trying to we're overthinking it. We want to like, oh, I want this to be perfect. And it's we need to, what is the point of being embodied if you're not going to feel joy and pleasure?
Ask the ghosts about that one, Sarah Jane. They'll tell you. They're like, please enjoy it while you can.
Exactly. I love that. I was ghost mother. Yeah. The world is literally on fire right now.
Mm-hmm. Sure is.
Literally on the fire. And I can look out my window and be like, you know what? I love this one beautiful tree that I get to see.
Yeah.
It's like, we can't, and we talk a lot about this when we talk about the principle of pleasure and joy. We often think that joy needs to be this. I made this little meme of like, do you remember like Ren and Stimpy were like happy joy?
Of course.
So I'm like, what people think joy is supposed to be, and then what joy actually feels like to me. And it's like Christopher Robin and Pooh Bear just like sitting on a little tree branch, right? It's like, it doesn't have to be this like, I'm so happy celebration.
This exaggerated, persistent
it's
experience.
More of a contentment. It's more of just like a peace.
Absolutely.
And then the final principle is be the change. So once we kind of work through all these, and if we are just present in our bodies, and you don't even need to like do anything necessarily, but just by feeling comfortable in your body and being in the world, it will help other people to feel safe and be comfortable in their body.
Yes, absolutely. The step for the projection of this is the work that I've done. Now here it will benefit you.
Exactly. And we share this when we talk about the pleasure and joy principle. These steps are both like they work in conjunction with each other, and they don't have to be like, you don't have to complete one to move out of the next. It's like you go forward and then you can go backwards, and then you can go a little bit forward and you go linear. And it's not linear. You can travel up and down these principles, and it's just even just the acknowledging the struggle, you then can share that with other people.
Exactly.
Like, hey, doesn't it suck to be in our bodies? And they're like, Thank you. Yes, thank you for saying that. You don't have to be like perfect like that. And that's a really big thing we really want to be clear about. This is not another measuring stick to beat yourself with. This is just a process to move through to connect back to yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no linear progress. There's no arriving. There's no perfection. Mm-hmm. This just unfolds in a sort of spiral throughout my life, and at multiple times in my life again if I'm
Oh,
lucky
yeah. Oh,
enough.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I went through the when I was we really struggled to get pregnant when I was trying to get pregnant.
Okay.
And then postpartum, that's a whole other, how do I be there's just like all these layers of experience and different changes in our life. And how can we come back to our bodies? Because our bodies are so smart.
They're so smart and they
I
deserve.
know.
Yeah, I loved that one of your principles was pleasure and joy. Like they deserve to be able to have
Yes.
joy
Yes.
and
Or else what's the point?
enjoyment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love the book Pleasure Activism by
Mm-hmm.
Adrienne Marie
We talk
Brown.
about
You
that
know
in
that book?
the, yes, it's so good.
So
Yeah.
good. It's just so much about that. Like the world is on fire. I can be an activist and I can enjoy myself. And that in
Mm-hmm.
itself is resistance and
That's
activism.
right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Beautiful. I think the Queen of Wands would approve of that message. I'm just gonna say
I think
that.
so
I'm just gonna
too.
put that
I
out
think
there.
so. Yeah.
I think she would like that. Oh my gosh.
I love
Okay, this
that.
hour like really is
Oh my goodness.
slipping through my fingers.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to touch on about your work, your offerings? You mentioned you have a workshop coming up. So any other
Mm-hmm.
little just bits and bobs, please, if there's anything else.
Yeah. So yeah, the workshop I'm really excited about. I'm almost finished with it. Included in it will be like a description of each card, the affirmations, little stories. You really get to
Nice.
really learn about it. A lot of this is in the guidebook, but we go into a deeper layer with the
Great.
workshop. And then also I'm going to include some Vata yoga practices in it that you can use. So it's not even just
Love.
learning about the tarot, but it's a way to like create ritual to come back
Yes.
to your body. Because that's the whole point.
Yes, and you've got something to carry with you and to try that's tangible that I
That's
can
right.
go back and watch. Oh, that's so
Exactly.
great.
Yes. And so once you purchase the cord, and I'm also going to be doing bundles too. So because I also have meditations per each card. So I have 78 meditations out there, which is like, why do I do this to myself? I don't know.
I love that you do that though.
Great.
I love it.
Thank you.
I'm always here for a guided meditation.
Right. So yeah, so you could buy currently online right now, we have the major arcana, and then also we have the full 78 meditation
The whole
that's
enchilada.
available. Whole enchilada. So there will be bundles where you could purchase the course and the meditations, or the course and the deck, or the course and the meditations and the
Nice.
deck.
Okay.
And you'll get little discounts if you bundle them together too. So it can be like this whole experience
Fabulous.
and then once you get access to the course, it's going to be on Teachable. You will have lifetime access to it. So you can jump right in, jump out. I mean, as you know, tarot takes a long time
A
to learn, like a long time.
Took me like several years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. Oh my goodness.
I'm still learning.
Not only that, still always seeing these new connections, and oh my goodness, always will be learning. And the guide or the workbook there's be a PDF workbook that will be part of it. There's 3 different, like when you like daily journaling, like how to write down when you're like cards that you're pulling.
Okay.
I have to find a better way to say
Yes.
that. So like there's like a daily card pull journal exercise. There's a weekly one. So you kind of like zoom out, and then there's a monthly one.
Nice.
So you can zoom out and see patterns. And then there's like places where you can write little notes about that. And there's a whole like journaling prompts about your experience with the card. It's just like there's a lot. It's a lot.
So many resources though, and you can kind of be a little a la carte with it based on what you're looking for. And that I love it, Sarah Jane. I'm just so excited for you.
And that's going to launch on the first day of Virgo season. So August 21st.
Appropriate. Let's go with it. Let's go with the energy.
Yes. And it's right before Mercury goes retrograde. So we're trying not to get into that energy, but it goes retrograde on the 28th. So I was like, let's get it in, under the wire.
You're smart.
Although it's like, I'm already feeling the shadow. So what am I talking about?
I know. Every time I'm like, maybe it won't be so bad. And I'm like, oh God.
Every time. Every single time. I know, it's so crazy.
And then, okay, so we'll leave it here. So please share with listeners where they can find you and follow along with your work and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so the tarot deck is Be With Your Body Tarot on Instagram and on TikTok. And then you can follow the podcast, Be With Your Body Podcast on Instagram. Please listen wherever you're finding this podcast, Be With Your Body.
Yes.
And there's also a season 1 that's just me, where I interview different people about their experiences in their bodies. So there's plenty there. And and then on my personal Instagram is at Jane Chapman. I think that's it. Yeah.
I love
You know,
it.
and then obviously like all the websites, bewithyourbodytarot.com, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
Everything is Be With Your Body.
exactly. Yeah, be with your body. Okay.
Yes.
Sarah Jane, I adore just sitting with
Oh my
you.
goodness.
I
So
love
fun.
your energy. I feel so like when I'm in your presence, like physically or virtually, I feel so grounded and like at peace. I love being around
Thank
you. So
you.
thank you. Thank you for being here.
Honestly, right back at you.
Aw.
This is, I feel so like instantly comfortable. I must be like the projector Scorpio moon.
Maybe. I know. Those little
I
underlying
just feel,
connections.
yes. I'm just like, oh, she gets it. We're good. We're good.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so more hang time, more of
Yes,
this.
please.
Beautiful. Thank you again. You are a delight.
Thank
This
you.
was just so much fun.
You are so much fun. I appreciate this. Thank you.
That's a wrap for this episode. If you haven't already, please take a moment now to subscribe, rate, and review us on your podcast app of choice. It really makes a difference and helps other people find the show. Thank you again to my guest, Sarah Jane Chapman. Your sparkling wit and creative spirit are such a delight. Thank you for leading by example and reminding us that loving our bodies means accepting them unconditionally. We'll see you back here next month with another amazing guest. And in the meantime, we hope you'll join us in the next Saturday Salon, a weekly hour of sacred space to spend on your creative projects, hosted by Jordan via Zoom. Sign up via the events page on our website, psychemagicpodcast.com. If you believe in this work and want to support the continuation of our show, please join us on Patreon. There, we are building a community where you'll find bonus dream work exercises, guided meditations, fun minisodes, and so much more. That's patreon.com/Psyche Magic. All links are included in show notes. We hope you'll also follow along with our shenanigans on Instagram and TikTok at Psyche Magic Podcast. Psyche Magic was produced and recorded by me, Jordan Hale. Editing for this episode is by Masuzu Inaga. Our theme music is by Young Summer. Artwork is by Annika Murphy. Special thanks go to Daniel Higby, Grace Fuse, and Michael McMillan. Thank you so much for listening. I'll leave you with a question. If you must sleep through a third of your life, are you willing to sleep through your dreams too? Get your dream journals out, y'all. Until next time.